Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Ballet Gamer, and we're back with another archetype. And I just want to also say I'm sorry for being gone for like a little over a week without really saying much of anything. Life just kept coming and coming, and that's a bad way to put it. Life was really hard for about a week or so, and beyond the live plays, I didn't really have much mental capacity, I guess, for much else, just a lot of stress. But we're getting back onto it, so if y'all could do me a favor and at least like the video just to help out with the algorithm, it's not been happy with me lately. And if you're watching this for the first time, then I'm sorry that you had to come up to one of these videos, but if you want to see more by chance, you can subscribe. And our Discord has been popping off, so if you want to join that, it's down in the description. But talking today about a very interesting archetype dedication, the Dandy. Now, the Dandy is a very interesting archetype dedication predominantly because it is a very socially specific kind of archetype. What I mean by that is that a lot of what the Dandy offers are benefits in social situations with some good utility that you can even use on your adventures. The Dandy is really good to add to any face character in your games, and is a potentially really good archetype as well to add to your more heavy combat characters to give them some outside of combat utility and to make them a little bit more well-rounded. I am very excited about this one. It's a very interesting one, and it's a very short and sweet one, which is very nice. So the Dandy dedication itself is very simple. All you need to do is be trained in diplomacy. And then what you get out of it is you gain a unique ability. Now this feat here is written very strangely compared to a lot of other feats. And it's because of how they normally structure their feats. So this one says you gain access to a special downtime activity, Influence Rumor, spending at least a day of downtime to manipulate the course, tone, or content of a rumor to your benefit. Now that sentence right there, it was a little paraphrased, but more or less the same thing. Normally, when they're kind of loosely describing the feature, they go into more detail on how it works in the next sentence. And so the sentence where they're describing the feature is typically just flavor. That's not the case in this one. This one literally is Influence Rumor requires that you spend a day of downtime, or at least one day, dictated by your DM, and then you manipulate a rumor, either changing how it's twisted, how it's said, or the very contents of the rumor itself. The next sentence here goes nothing into explaining exactly what that does, other than the DM can adjust the DC based on the size of the communities that it's found in. So it's a very interesting ability. Practically what this can be used for is you can use this to give misinformation out if your target is more politically, socially, invested in the game. Or you can use this to set up baits, traps, or whatever in a situation where, again, your target is a lot more socially focused. It's one of those things that is very specific, but I don't see it being used in a lot of situations. Though, the good thing about this dedication feat is you also become trained in deception and society. And if you're trained in either or both of them, you become expert instead. This is a really good way to get up to 2 expert proficiencies at level 2. That's pretty good. I think 3 is it even skill proficiencies go up, or no, I think it's skill feats, whatever, I'm not sure, but that's really good. In fact, there's a lot of archetype dedications out there that have a minimum level 4 that do the same thing. So it's very interesting that this one didn't really go by that metric. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things about the Dandy that I feel like they weren't quite set in stone on their design principles, but it's really good. Again, like I said, just picking this skill or this dedication up yourself gives you 2 skill proficiency increases, which is really good and is a good way to balance out a character that is more orientated towards combat, like a monk, fighter, or even a ranger, who are spending a lot more of their feats into other things. And I guess I should mention as well, really good for bonus archetype dedication. Not necessarily if you're trying to optimize your build, but this is a good way to add some flavor to your character. So at the very least, I mean, picking up just the dedication could be really good for some builds just to give you a little bit more dynamics to your character. Distracting flattery is very interesting, and it kind of sets an interesting trend for the dandy dedication. So distracting flattery is deception based. In fact, in order to pick it up, you must be at least an expert in deception. And more or less what it does is if you're observing an ally who is making some kind of social faux pas, you can attempt a sudden reaction to kind of gloss things over, more or less. You make a deception DC against the target's will DC, and whether you pass or whether you pass the check or not, they become immune for 10 minutes. Now, if you succeed, the target's attitude doesn't decrease as a result of your ally's social blunder. Failure, it decreases normal, and crit failure, or their opinion of your ally and you, decrease. So, very socially focused, but one of the things that's interesting about this one is despite the dandy dedication requiring trained proficiency in diplomacy, all their features are based on deception. So if you're going to be using the dandy dedication, you're going to be wanting to invest heavily in your deception. And fortunately, if you at least at level 1 put a point in, or increase deception to train, it's already expert at this point. So you're pretty set until level 7. Gossip lore is really good, has super high utility. So what it is you gain access to a lore skill that can be used to recall knowledge on any topic. But if you fail a check to recall knowledge with gossip lore, you gain the effects of dubious knowledge skill feat. So it says you gain the effects of dubious knowledge, so you don't actually gain dubious knowledge just inherently through this, but if you fail, you do get the effects of it, which is very interesting. It allows you to essentially get a skill feat that you might not pick up in your build. Though, honestly, if you're going for a very social kind of character, or at least like recall knowledge in some kind of way, dubious knowledge would be one you'd pick up. But I think that's interesting. And another interesting as well is you can't increase the proficiency for gossip lore until you get legendary in society. So this this particular archetype dedication requires skill proficiencies in diplomacy, deception, and now society to get the most out of their features. That's a very heavy skill load, not impossible for sure, especially because the dedication itself gives you 2 free skill increases. But that's just something to keep in mind. Now, this will get your gossip lore up to expert proficiency. And something I should mention for both players and GMs out there. Now, it says you can use recall knowledge to recall anything on any topic. That doesn't mean inherently you can make a recall knowledge on all things. There is something called base proficiency or needed proficiency. I can't remember. It's a rule in the core rulebook, actually. And what it more or less says is that there are sometimes your GM may need you to have a certain proficiency in order to make a roll for a check. For things that are particularly unknown, you can't just use gossip lore because your proficiency is likely not to be high enough. Now, even at expert, you can get away with most things, and this is only used in cases where said knowledge is not very widely known. But if your DM ever rules that your gossip lore doesn't apply to a situation, just know that that's because that's not how it's necessarily intended. And as a player, you should know that when you use gossip lore to recall knowledge on anything, that might also color some of the things that you might recall with it. The DM overall gets to dictate what kind of information is given out to you. So it might be a lot more socially based. I'm just trying to say that gossip lore is really, really good, and you can use it for combat purposes, obviously to recall knowledge on creatures and on any kind of creature. Just know that there are some limitations. Fabricate connections is another really good one, and it's really kind of painting that the dandy just has connections everywhere. They're very socially connected in most settlements I go to, or at least most normal settlements. And this one does require that you are a master in deception. So that means, and this is also a skill feat rather than just an archetype feat. In fact, I didn't mention this earlier, but distracting flattery, also a skill feat. Fun fact. So fabricated connections is a skill feat that you can pick up at level 7 at the earliest, and that is if you're using your skill increase at level 7 to get to master in deception, which you probably should. A lot of the features are kind of based on that. But what it does more or less is you can use deception in place of different skills when attempting to earn income, make an impression, request, or to subsist. You can use fabricate connections to make an impression or request only once per day, and you can only use it once per week to earn income or subsist. So it's a very interesting way, and this really just makes it so that you can use your deception for a lot more, and it's a skill feat, so you can pick it up, again, without really affecting your overall build all that much. It's really good, and honestly, it's a skill feat, so I can't really knock anything off of it as far as my impression on it. I do like it. It makes it so that your character is just a very good liar, and they can spin whatever they want and make impressions, saying what people want to hear. I really, really like it. It paints a really interesting image, and it gives you a lot of utility with deception. And deception is one of the few core skills that you can use in combat for making feints. So this is really good to add to your combat character, because not only is your deception being used to help make enemies flat-footed to you, but you can also use it for a bunch of different out of combat downtime activities, giving your character a lot more to do in the game and in the narrative overall. The dandy is surprisingly really good at rounding out characters who are a lot more combat focused, or this is really good to further emphasize a face roll on more charisma based characters. In either regard, the dandy is great. And before we end out here, we're going to go ahead to their last feat, which is yet another skill feat. So that is, in the entire archetype dedication, actually only only 2 feats and 3 skill feats, which I find is fascinating. And not only that, but skill feats count towards the total number of feats you need to pick until you can pick another archetype, which means that you don't actually need to use a lot of your actual character feat levels for your class feats or whatever to get out of dandy if you want to go into another archetype dedication, which is really good, honestly. And so Party Crasher, really good one. It requires that you're a master in society. Now, for an archetype dedication that required trained in diplomacy, everything else uses either its society or its deception, which is interesting, really weird. This is a really weird archetype dedication. It's very strange, especially because a lot of the things you would use diplomacy for gets counteracted by fabricated connections, my apologies, which it seems very counterintuitive. I don't know. Very interesting, but regardless, so what Party Crasher does is that you don't need to do anything special to get into a social event for you and your party. I don't even think there's a limit. Yeah, it's yourself and your allies. So any kind of gathering, as long as it's a social gathering and this gathering has staff or some kind of logical reason why you would get in, you can get in even without an invitation. You don't even need to make any skill checks to do this, which is interesting because it's required that you have a master in society to get this skill feat. But in any regard, it's a great skill feat, for your narrative. And the best part is as long as this isn't like your third archetype feat that you need to swap to another archetype, you can retrain out a party crasher when you no longer need it. So when you're no longer in a large settlement and don't plan to be for a while, you can train out a party crasher into another more helpful skill feat. Regardless, it's pretty good. It's got a lot of narrative drive behind it. I really like the idea of it. Now, you can't use this to get into events like cult meetings unless they have catering for some reason. Or it's a lot more of like a public cult kind of thing. You know, like they're not too picky about their membership. But regardless, it is really good for a lot of very specific narrative situations. And like I said, you can always retrain out of it if you need to. So honestly, just having the dandy archetype dedication gives you access to a lot of flexibility on how you want to approach some social situations. And that pretty much sums up my entire opinion of the dandy, which is the dandy is really good at rounding your character out. This can be used in so many different character builds because you only really need to invest in the initial dedication feat, and a lot of the other feats from the archetype can be picked up with skill feats. And because the initial dedication feat itself gives you 2 skill proficiencies, that's really good, even if you don't plan on doing anything more with dandy other than that. I mean, just a single feat to get access to a lot of really good social feats. This is really good. Again, if you have a fighter that you really want to make a really good combat build, all you have to do is sacrifice 1 feat and bam, you have a very socially adapted character, as long as you didn't absolutely dumpster your charisma. And it really takes no major effort other than the fact that you can't invest heavily into athletics. But you can invest into deception, so, I mean, you can use that for feinting rather than trying to trip or grapple an enemy. I don't know. I think this is a really good one. And honestly, it doesn't even prevent you from actually picking up athletics. You just might not be able to get it up to master proficiency as quickly as you would like. But beyond that, I mean, I think this is a really good archetype dedication. And I would love to hear any builds y'all have that use the dandy specifically. So make a mention down in the comments, or you can jump over to our Discord where we have a Pathfinder 2e build channel. And I've been seeing a lot of really good builds in that channel. It's been very fun to watch all the different kind of things. There's never been a game I've ever been as excited for builds as Pathfinder 2e. I've been GMing for a really long time, and I still predominantly DM when it comes to Pathfinder 2e, but I really love the builds. I really love how diverse and flexible they can be, and how it doesn't really even cost really that much as far as combat proficiency for some of these dips. Like I said, 1 combat feat, oh, you didn't get to pick up knockback or something. As long as you don't have a knockback based kind of build, that's not really a big dip, and bam, there you go, a bunch of social skills that you could pick up, use, and make your character much more whole, diverse, and more usable in more situations than if you just went a full combat character. It's just absolutely amazing. But I've been rambling on a little too much about this. I hope y'all enjoyed. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.